I would like to welcome you to the 2022 Mayoral Forum for the Clarington municipal election. As we all know, housing is a major issue, not just for our province, but for our local communities. We are excited to be able to hear directly from the candidates on how they plan to help with the current housing supply and affordability issues. Before we begin, we collectively acknowledge the lands and people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We are thankful to be welcomed on these lands in friendship. The lands we are situated on are covered under the Williams Treaties and the traditional territory of the Mississauga. These lands remain home to a number of Indigenous nations and people. A special thank you to our media partner, Rogers Durham, TV Durham, who has joined us once again. We'll be advising you through social media when this forum will be broadcast. And now I'm happy to introduce our moderator for tonight, Roger Bauma. No stranger to politics at every level, Roger served as an Oshawa City Councillor from 2010 to 2014. He has also served as chair of the Oshawa Corporate Service Committee, member of the Oshawa Finance Committee, and council representative on the Oshawa Public Library Board. Roger has held a number of other volunteer roles, ranging from seniors housing to other nonprofit boards. Roger has also been a member of the OREA, Ontario Realtors Party Committee since 2018. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you, Shannon. It's great to be here. These events are always, they can be fun, they can be informative, they can sometimes be spirited. This evening's forum will be a question and answer session versus the traditional debate format. Let's cover off some of the highlights for how this forum is structured. An initial list of questions has been prepared through submissions from the government relations committees of both the Durham Region Association of Realtors and the Durham Region Home Builders Association. Each question will be directed initially to one candidate, starting in the order they are seated and then moving to their left. Your right, their left. After which the other candidates will each be given an opportunity to respond. If time permits, we will accept additional questions from the floor. If you do have a question, please write it on the forms that are provided at the back. You'll see Travis at the table. These additional questions will be reviewed in the context of the other questions that are being asked this evening so that we don't have duplication. And they may be summarized for clarity. Your question may be directed to a specific candidate, but all candidates will be given an opportunity to respond. Of course, we may not have time to ask all of the questions that you submit. Candidates, to help keep us on track this evening, you will have 1 minute to respond to each question. At the front is Dennis Roberts, lifting his yellow 10-second card. Dennis will raise the card indicating you've got 10 seconds left in your minute, and then at the appropriate time, he will stand up and raise the red card, at which time we will immediately move on to the next candidate. Candidates, as you know, you are given 2 minutes for opening and closing remarks. The order of the opening statements was determined by an earlier draw and will be reversed then for your 2-minute closing. You'll have 4 opportunities to provide 30-second rebuttals to another candidate's answer. This is entirely at your discretion. You don't have to use all 4, but please use them wisely. We're going to get you to help us keep track. You each have 4 chits in front of you. Just move a chit forward so that we know that when you've used all 4 of your opportunities. There is a little however on here. However, as your moderator, I do have the discretion to allow a quick rebuttal if you target another candidate in your response. We are going to try and keep this friendly, spirited, and yet informative. Finally, to our audience, both in attendance and watching on Rogers, I just want to thank you for participating in this process. We're thrilled to have such an engaged community. We do hope this event will be informative for all. I'd like to introduce our candidates again from your left to right, Mr. Tom Dingwall, Mr. Adrian Foster, and Mr. Joe Neal. The candidates have given me permission to call them Tom, Adrian, and Joe, which makes it easier for me not to mess up. Opening remarks, again, we drew this order earlier. Adrian, you have 2 minutes for your opening remark.
Well, good evening. I'm Mayor Adrian Foster. Thank you all for being here. Online voting happens between October 18th and the 24th. With that vote, with your vote, you are hiring your mayor and your council. Before hiring someone, you look at their resume, their experience, accomplishments, and the ability to work with other people to do what you need done. I've posted my resume at adrianfoster.ca. You can see my experience, my accomplishments, what I've done, and what I'm doing. You'll see a pattern of service and caring for our amazing community. When hiring, you'd gauge commitment. Many candidates only step up their appearances at local events and business openings during election campaigns. That's not me. I am and have been deeply involved in the community. You may want to check out my references. You'll find several on my website, but a better bet is if you know someone who works at Clarington, Durham region, or one of the groups that I work and help with, ask them about me. Ask how I work, ask if I'm engaged, ask how I treat the people around me. Ask about the other candidates too. So what's hanging in the balance in this election? Well, with a broad team, I've been carefully laying the groundwork for the imminent transfer of hundreds of acres of land for public use, for welcoming thousands of jobs in the energy sector and seeding a multi-billion-dollar industry right here in Clarington. We've made significant progress on access to high-speed internet and have started work on improving your cell phone quality and coverage. More growth and traffic issues are coming. We're taking the necessary steps to balance that growth and protect Clarington's unique charm. Getting that right requires a team with knowledge and experience. The province has approved a new long-term care facility, has set a date for the reconstruction of Bowmanville Hospital, and we are very close to building the hospice. We can take none of these files for granted. Now is not the time to let up. Now is not the time for on-the-job learning.
Thank you, Adrian. Tom.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I appreciate all the comments that Mayor Foster just made, and I appreciate his service. For those of you who don't know me, I've been a Clarington resident for 30 years, and I was a police officer here for 30 years as well. I was a lead investigator in homicide, leading some of our largest investigative teams, and I was a sexual assault and child abuse detective. I was an investigator in professional standards, investigating allegations of police misconduct and dealing with public complaints. And I am now an investigator with the Law Society, where I investigate allegations against lawyers and paralegals. I'm uniquely qualified for this job. And the reason being is I have dealt with people suffering mental health crisis. I have dealt with people suffering addiction issues, homelessness, elder abuse. All of these things directly impact our community and our politicians, and our approach in dealing with this has not changed over the years. There's been willful blindness and there's been indifference in a lot of these areas, and we can no longer allow that to take place. We have a lot of promises for future jobs, and if we look back to the last election, you will see they are the exact same promises, that we will have thousands of jobs coming from our nuclear sector, and they will not be here until 2028. So to consider that as an accomplishment would be a mistake. We have failed to bring good paying jobs to Clarington, and we need to make it a priority. We need to encourage the development that's coming, but we also have to be very engaged and involved in where that development takes place, the type of development we're looking for, and make sure that we are planning the communities the way we want to see them built. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom. Joe.
I'm Joe Neal, and I'm running to be mayor of Clarington. I'm currently the regional councillor for Wards 1 and 2, and I have a long history of serving the community, including 12 years as a local and regional councillor. I'm hearing from many residents throughout Clarington that after 3 terms, it is time for a change of mayor. There's been a lot of growth in Clarington, and the concern from residents is that municipal infrastructure has not kept up with growth. There's a lot more traffic and congestion on our roads. It's not being addressed. Despite increased taxes and new revenue from development, key projects in recreational spaces have not moved ahead, and I would use as examples the Boneville and Curtis waterfronts. These need to be connected to pedestrian and bike trails for all to enjoy. Now, fiscally, in the last 10 years, Clarington has averaged an increase of $2.5 million of additional revenue each year. Can anyone here point to anything in the last 2 terms or the last 8 or 10 years where there's been a significant improvement in Clarington? As mayor, I will prioritize the completion of key projects, and I will focus spending on improving the community for all residents. Now, on the issue of taxes, if you're a senior or someone whose income is not going up, and your mortgage interest rate is going up, this is an important issue. And I have voted against tax increases at both Clarington and Durham region that weren't warranted. Lastly, I want to touch on the GO train. Never has 10 miles or 10 to 15 miles of additional track proved so daunting in the railway building history of the world. You think of what John A. Macdonald accomplished in the 1880s, getting across the Rockies, and I will ensure that this is brought to pass and there will be a solution brought to bear on that, and it'll get connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Tom, this first question, and it's a doozy, we'll go to you initially, and then we'll move down the table. An entire generation is being priced out of the real estate market by growing demand and insufficient supply. This has a direct impact on both our families and our business community as young people choose to buy or rent, and by extension, work and play elsewhere. At the same time, our seniors are often stuck in homes that they raised their families in but are now larger than they need. This creates a bottleneck as they are reluctant to make these homes available to growing families because they have no suitable housing options within our community. You know that it's been widely reported that Ontario needs 1.5 million new homes in the next 10 years to balance supply with demand. As one of the fastest growing regions in the province, Durham region will be playing a large part in this solution. As mayor, what will you do to improve the development approval process, timelines, and current staffing constraints to be able to stay on pace with this necessary growth? And again, we'll start with Tom. 1 minute, Tom.
First and foremost, most of our housing supply is single detached homes, and most entry level or people trying to enter the market cannot afford single detached homes these days. And most of our seniors that are trying to downsize only have limited options of either buying a condo or renting a condo. I believe we need to build more purpose-built rental units to allow people to enter leave their parents' homes and have a place to go, that our seniors have places that they can rent without high condo fees. And I will work with the Housing Supply Working Group in relation to the More Homes for Everyone Act, work with the province, follow their direction, and work with our developers to ensure that we're building a variety of houses and to eliminate the red tape. We've been hearing that for at least 2 elections now, and the fact that we still have that much red tape should indicate it hasn't happened.
That's time. Thank you, Tom. Adrian.
One of us is going to be really loud, and other start out really quiet. 3 things very, very quickly. So the first thing is listen to the industry. That is happening right now. So there are roundtables going with staff and the industry to identify bottlenecks and identify changes that we need. Second are jobs, and I'm hoping we're going to be able to address some of the misperception on jobs later, but we all know that people have to drive till they qualify. Local jobs mean that people can drive until they qualify. And the third part is to make sure that we've got an appropriate mix, both of high density and in areas where people need a front yard and a backyard, because not everyone can live in a condominium.
Thank you. Joe.
The province is pushing the municipalities for denser housing, but at the same time, the province is the first one to break all the rules so that they make. So if you think of, they've established communities like Seton, which really had not much connection to any municipality, such as Pickering. So, but they've also mandated that we must meet planning deadlines. So we're going to have to meet those deadlines. So I think we have to give that a chance, which is starting in January. But I will say that I will not support established communities having dense housing built right beside them. So there's an example on Curtis Road where they want to put in 38 semis. They bought, I think, 2 houses on Curtis Road, and they want to put 38 semis. It just won't work. I won't support that. And I'd also say, if you look at north of Durham College, that's not good planning. I don't want to see that come to Clarington. Thank you.
Thank you. The second question, we will start with Adrian. The GO train extension would seem to create a terrific opportunity for Clarington to encourage intensified housing within walking distance of transit. As mayor, would you support planned communities with higher density in proximity to this new transit infrastructure?
I can do that in way less than a minute. The answer is yes. And for anyone that's paying attention, we are doing exactly that right now.
Thank you. Joe.
Well, for example, there's two planned 25-story buildings that have we just had a public meeting on it last week. So the challenge is going to be accommodating that higher density. Nothing like that has been built in Clarington before. But at the same time, there's residents that I ran into at that meeting, a lady that was upset because they're going to block her garden from getting enough sun, and she was upset about that. So we're going to have to balance that challenge. Is 25 stories too much? I think so. So maybe we keep it at 12. But again, I'm not in favor of allowing the basic feel of Bowmanville being overrun by, it's not St. Jamestown we're trying to build there. That's all. So we're going to have to balance it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Tom.
The answer is yes. I would support higher density along major transit routes. It creates pedestrian-friendly live-work communities. If we're building up, we're not building out, and we're not eating up more of our land. I think it's a good opportunity to bring some of the higher density closer to transit where they can walk, but I understand what Joe was saying, that in an area where we already have houses that a building was planned, I'm not in favor of allowing amendments if there's not enough parking to accommodate it and things like that. We need to take into consideration what was originally planned, and if we originally plan a taller building, then I think that's appropriate.
Thank you. A third question. As affordability is a key issue, how will you address NIMBYism, both within council and with the public when it comes to new housing developments? And on that, we're starting with Joe.
Well, that term gets thrown around a lot, but I would challenge anybody here who has lived in a house, for example, for 40 years, and like I said, on Curtis Road, a proposal comes forward where a developer buys up, 2 of your neighbors, and then tables a proposal for 38 townhouse units, which simply doesn't work in that area. So I have no problem with supporting residents that want to fight proposals like that, because a lot of times these units are being shoehorned into an area which is simply too small. It doesn't fit the area. So I've always supported residents when it made sense. On the other hand, if you go on my website, votejoeneal.com, you'll see what does work. So there are developments that do work, and it's all about making the right mix. But I'm not going to support unrestricted development. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Again, we have to make sure that the developments that we are planning in certain areas fit well within the community. There will always be certain people that will be impacted and affected, but we have to look at the greater good, and we also have to look at if it makes sense for the community. If we're bringing housing into an area, if there's schooling for the people in that area, if there's transit for the people in that area, we will have to make some accommodations for infill projects. But at the end of the day, it also has to fit within the community.
Thank you. Adrian?
Thank you. So council needs to be accountable for how they vote if we're dealing with NIMBYism. So we are hearing that there are projects that are too dense, too many people in a small spot, too much in one area. On the other hand, we're hearing that we shouldn't be expanding our urban boundaries. So this is that notion of land being used for housing. And you can't have it both ways. You're either going to allow some density and some expansion if you want to get the balance that we need to protect the town that we have come to love. Simply ignoring it is not a way of dealing with it. So the accountability from council is, are you consistent in how you vote on projects and the things that you're telling the public? So I'm going with accountability of councillors.
Thank you. And rebuttal, Joe. Joe's using his first rebuttal.
So I think what Mayor Foster's talking about is the vote at Durham Region to expand the urban area by 9,400 acres. But he bought the flawed analysis from the developers, from that particular developer's consultant, which was totally flawed and was less dense than even our current densities are called for. So Mayor Foster is sort of trying to pass the buck on that one. Thank you.
Rebuttal, Adrian.
So very quickly, the recommendation that was voted on at Durham Region was a recommendation that came out of Clarington staff based on Clarington's needs. And that was consistent with the vast majority of our neighbors. And again, there is no silver bullet. If we are going to manage this, we need some growth. We can either go out wide or we can go up tall, and neither of those are suitable solutions.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think what's happening, rebuttal, Tom, I think what's happening with the mics is that sound is turning your mic on as it's your turn to speak. So just a little pause might get your mic working for you. Tom, 30-second rebuttal. And just if you can, slide the chip forward so that I can see that they're being used.
Sure. So Clarington staff recommended 2A. However, regional staff recommended S4. Now, 2A never went through the public process. It was never vetted by staff and went against previous decisions of regional council during last year's comprehensive review. All environmental advisory committees spoke in opposition to 2A, but Mayor Foster voted in favor of 4.
And that's time. Question 4, exclusionary zoning policies prohibit multifamily housing units to be built on properties in which single-family homes are currently situated. As mayor, would you support an end to exclusionary zoning to ensure more housing units can be built within our community? Tom.
The answer is yes in certain areas and in certain circumstances. I believe we need a variety of housing options, and what you've just described is some of those options. But there are larger lots in certain areas that could accommodate 4plexes, 6plexes, things of that nature that would provide some of those housing options and, again, prevent us from having to eat up additional land.
Thank you. Adrian.
All right, you can hear me. I'm going to concur, with that. So there are always exceptions on either side. So are there neighborhoods where the intensification makes absolutely no sense? Yes, there are. Are there spots where it does make sense? Yes, there are spots where it does make sense. So this has to be done on a site-by-site specific decision.
Wonderful. Thank you. Joe.
Well, our current zoning bylaws, in fact, do allow a fairly wide range of housing. So I don't know if this actually fits Clarington. The other thing is we just amended our zoning bylaws to allow for additional dwelling units. So you have the ability to build a unit in your basement if it's properly outfitted, properly inspected. So to me, this is a question that maybe we've already dealt with, quite frankly. So.
Thank you. How could you help to make underutilized or surplus land available to the industry to increase housing supply and improve affordability? Adrian.
Hello. Thank you for that. One of the observations that I'd make is a lot of the strip plazas that we have, the malls, are on the main corridors. They would be absolutely perfect for development. They're serviced, there's parking available, so the question is, how do we work with the industry and the property owners of those to not use up more land and put density where density belongs? There are huge underutilized opportunities out there right now today.
Thank you. Joe.
Well, I've actually suggested that we look at some of the marginal land where we could perhaps have nonprofit housing built. It's not prime land, but maybe with the agreement of the Conservation Authority, we could perhaps build something there. I don't know what prime multi-residential land is going for an acre, but it must be a huge number right now. So I think we should look at maybe some of the, quote, environmentally labeled land, and maybe some of it would be suitable, some of it obviously not, but I think that maybe is something that we should be looking at. Thanks.
Thank you. Tom.
Sorry about that. I'm going to say that there's a combination of the two. We do need to work with our developers and make opportunity to. I'm sure you've seen across the region. You're seeing apartments built above plazas and things like that. So combining retail and commercial and residential, but also working with our province to free up land and make that land available, I think is something that we definitely have to consider.
Thank you, Tom. Under your leadership, what role do you see the municipality playing in attracting business, including domestic and international investment in our community? And for that, we'll start with Joe.
Well, I've always been a proponent of if we keep the costs down, then industry will follow. So if we're going to be increasing our taxes constantly, making it more expensive for companies to locate here, then we're not going to incent them to come here. So I'm not a believer in picking winners and losers, i.e. sometimes the region decides they're going to give certain companies grants or exemptions. At the same time, they're hammering other companies that want to come here with development charges. So it doesn't make any sense. So I've fought at the region constantly over that issue and Clarington, and quite frankly, I'm a little disappointed when I never hear from the Board of Trade on that issue because they should be front and center on that, but we've got to keep the costs down and then companies will want to locate here.
Thank you. Tom.
It's my understanding that planning and development just took over economic development here, and I would say that and I've mentioned this before, we have not done enough to attract good paying jobs and business here. We have not capitalized on our agritourism opportunities. There are success stories, but we're missing an opportunity to have a collective anchor industry and drive in more tourism and economic prosperity. But we have to work with our businesses to remove barriers, red tape, and allow current businesses to diversify and letting industry know that we welcome them, we respect them, and we want them here.
Thank you. Adrian.
Well, thank you, and my goodness, I hope my colleagues will talk with the Clarington Board of Trade, members of the Board of Trade, to see how active and how hard they are working. And if any of them are here, they will be disappointed. So my attitude on economic development is Clarington does not need to play on a level field. We have strategic advantages available to us right now, such as the nuclear file. We have the nuclear industry here, and I'll speak to jobs later on, that has and is bringing thousands of jobs, good-paying jobs as well. We have things like Mosport. Mosport is a unique asset that municipalities generally do not have. Capitalizing on that and relationships with the university. I could go on, but I've only got 10 seconds, but anyone who wants to talk about EPDEV and my attitudes around that, I'll be delighted to spend some time.
Thank you. Joe.
Thought I answered that one already. But
Oh, sorry. We've
I was
done
first.
the cycle.
Do I get another chance?
No, you don't. You don't.
One more chance?
That's my fault. I'm already on to the next question. Tom would like a rebuttal on that question.
So anyone who goes back and looks at last year's mayoral debate will hear again that we are bringing thousands of jobs here. And anyone who was just at the nuclear family event will quickly learn that about 150 jobs are coming right now, and maybe another 150 in the next 2 years. The 2,000 jobs are not expected until 2028. So I don't know why we're relying on that as a success story when we haven't done it.
Thank you, Tom. Question 7, and we'll start with you, Tom. And by the way, Joe, thank you for keeping me on track there. I appreciate the help. How do you view the current council goals, and what do you see changing as you look forward to the next term, the next 4 years? Tom.
I would have to say that right now, for the last couple of terms, we've had a very divided council. What I expect to see is we will see new people on council. We will see new energy. We'll see people that are working towards staying ahead of what's coming, being proactive and dealing with things. But we will work together. We will unite, and we will find consensus. We won't be having arguments for the sake of winning those arguments. We'll be working together to get the right result for the people of Clarington.
Thank you. Adrian.
Moving forward. So moving forward, I would see a council that is identifying a strategic plan with goals and targets and far more public engagement moving forward with. I would see a council that can pull in the same direction on the big files. I would hope for a council that understands the things that are important to the individual councillors that we can get behind and work together as a cohesive team. Council is Team Clarington. There aren't supposed to be opposition politics. It's Team Clarington pulling in one direction, not always agreeing. Because that's not our role, but pulling in the direction that benefits the quality of life for every resident here in Clarington.
Thank you. Joe.
What I can say is what's been sadly lacking is the spirit of compromise. So many times I would go and see the mayor suggest something and was told right out of the gate, it's a bad idea. So yeah, I would fight absolutely for what I believed in, and I would vote the way I thought I should. And what happens sometimes is I would bring an idea forward, the answer was no, and then 6 years later, finally my idea was put in practice. So I don't want to get into too many specifics. But let me talk about our strategic plan from the last 4 years. If you looked at it, all it said was we're going to plan this, we're going to plan that, we're going to look at the waterfronts, we're going to look at Camp 30. So what I will do as mayor is I will bring those projects to completion. We're going to stop studying them and get building them. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder to the candidates, do not, if you could not turn your mics off when you put them down, What's happening is sound is controlling your mics, and that's why you're getting that brief pause as you answer each question. Adrian, this question we will start with you. When Highway 418 was first discussed, it was not intended, as you know, to be a toll road, and it included additional entry and exit points that we have not seen. With tolls now removed, will you advocate for new entry and exit points with the provincial government during this next term? Adrian.
So I'm going to give you two answers to that, and one is yes, as they're needed. Certainly, and as development is going around that, we are going to need the ability to get on and off of that highway. The other end, and before we advocate for that, it is going to be absolutely necessary to advocate for controlled exits from the 418. So for any of you that are trying to make a left-hand turn onto Taunton Road, a left-hand turn onto Highway 2, it's dangerous and difficult, and that is not going to get easier. So I think first things first will be controlled intersections, and secondly, as needed, absolutely.
Thank you. Joe.
Well, I don't want to give an off the top of my head answer to that one because it's kind of a technical question and involves a lot of things like, you know, how's it going to affect the local traffic, the local residents? So just for instance, are we going to have an entrance and exit off of Bloor Street or whether it's called Baseline at that point? So I'm not sure if it's such a great idea, to be honest with you, because is it really necessary? It's going to increase the traffic for the residents that live on that road, right? So there's always an advantage and a disadvantage. So quite frankly, that's something where you'd have to get the studies done, from traffic experts and so on. But you could end up, be careful what you wish for. You could end up creating traffic on roads where people are, they've never experienced that before. So you look at the dump trucks, for example, on Regional Road 20, big problem. So thank you.
Thank you. Tom.
My simple answer would be yes, where they make sense. Some of the examples that were just given make no sense to have an on or off ramp in certain locations, but clearly there are other areas that would benefit and make it easier for people to get home. So where they do make sense, yes, absolutely, I will work towards to making that happen.
I'm going to take a little leeway and add an 8B onto this, just to get back to perhaps the intent of the question, and that is, do you believe that additional exits and entrances would open up additional land for employment opportunities and residential, allowing better commuting from lands that are currently within your plan? So 30 seconds on each, same order. Joe, Tom, and then Adrian.
Well, again, you have the issue of servicing. So sounds attractive, but then where's the servicing coming from? So I'm not aware of any servicing along the 418. And, I'd like to see servicing get completed on the main street in Curtis before we start talking about servicing, commercial lands or residential lands along the 418. So quite frankly, I don't see it.
Thank you. Tom.
Again, it's the same answer. Where it makes sense, if we can get the servicing and we can open up lands to bring new development opportunities along the 418, I think it would be a benefit for our community and our municipality. But again, it would have to be for the right reasons and in the right areas.
Wonderful. Thank you. Adrian.
Thank you. So I thought that was actually part of the first question, that the only reason you would need this would be access to employment lands or more residential development. And if we've got employment there, development, residential development, we've got the servicing. So, it's carts and horses, where in this case the horse is going to have to go in front of the cart. So my answer is still yes.
Thank you. A current topic of discussion is the Strong Mayors legislation, recently passed in favor of the mayors in Ottawa and Toronto. This legislation gives mayors significant operational control and decision-making powers. Does the mayor of Clarington need this decision-making power to serve effectively? And on that, we're starting with Joe.
I don't believe so. The mayor has, I think, should have enough sway, power of persuasion with the rest of council if he thinks it should go in a certain way. But he has to bring along the rest of his council. The problem I've had is if you just count to 4 and then that's all you're interested in, that's, the problem that I've experienced is a lot of times decisions are made where say the 4 votes are already lined up and your opinion doesn't even matter. The things you put forward as compromises are rejected. So I don't think, if I'm the mayor, I'm not going to operate that way. I'm going to try and bring all members of council along. So thank you.
Thank you. Tom.
Well, I would start by saying the simple fact they had to create this act should tell you that mayors and councils have not been able to get it right. We wouldn't need these special powers if people were able to work together. We wouldn't need these special powers if people could find consensus and do what's right for the people. Now, you just heard Joe talking about how he was unable to get things done. Changing his title doesn't change his ability to work with other people and find consensus. And that's the reality. You don't need to be in the mayor's chair to get stuff done. You need to work with other people and find consensus. So that is what I will do. I will not use any kind of dictatorship tactics. The people that I work with were elected to represent the people, and their voice will matter at the table each and every time.
Adrian.
So thank you for that. My knee-jerk reaction is no. Are they needed? It is going to be very, very interesting to watch, to see what happens in Ottawa and in Toronto. If you want to watch a mayor alienate their council really quickly, arbitrarily overturning their decisions seems like a wonderful way of getting there, and that's not a good spot to be. So I'm going to be watching this closely, and depending what the province opts to do, I might be careful what I wish for, or what anyone wishes for, not what I wish for.
Thank you. And Joe has used his second rebuttal. Joe.
So just to respond to Mr. Dingwall, and I think this is the problem when you sort of try to jump in and you try to be the mayor and you haven't come up through kind of the levels. So I've been very successful at fighting on behalf of residents, all of Clarington residents. I have support across Clarington, and I'm quite frankly surprised when I hear from residents of other wards. But I'll just say 2 words, Zone Clarington. I got a lot accomplished for rural residents. There was a lot of overreaching, okay, and I think a lot of rural residents are thankful for what I did. Thank you.
Time's up. Time's up. Thank you. Next question goes to Tom initially. Do you believe that steps are needed to ensure the region of Durham and municipalities within are viewed as advancing a strong and united voice with the provincial and federal governments? Tom.
I think that goes without saying. We should be working collectively. We should be working with our counterparts at region, and we should be working with all levels of government. Now, I don't believe that this council and this mayor have had a strong working relationship with our province. When Doug Ford announced that that he was bringing the train, he made an announcement, $730 million announcement, and neither one of these gentlemen were invited to that announcement. That should tell you that there is a disconnect. But we need our counterparts, our other mayors, or other councils to collectively stand up and say that Durham region matters. Working with one voice is always stronger than working by yourself. And that seems to be consistent across the board when we're trying to advocate for things. we need someone to stand up and do that, and I would hope that the region would do that for us.
Thank you, Tom. Adrian.
Well, thank you. So that is absolutely integral to success. I can tell you that Durham Region is more cohesive and more cognizant of municipalities' needs than they have ever been in the past. There is also a growing recognition that government relations are exceptionally important. The province is the greatest risk as well as the greatest benefactor for municipalities. We need to work with them. The last couple of years, it's been problematic with the pandemic. It's been difficult doing things over Zoom, not face-to-face. But I can tell you, if you look at the things that have come to Durham Region and the things that have come to Clarington from the province, we have done exceptionally well. I can also tell you that I have a fantastic relationship with our MPPs and always have, and we'll look forward to continuing those relationships.
Thank you. Joe.
Well, it's become pretty much standard operating procedure for things like transit to be funded, you know, expansion of transit, a third, a third, a third. It's almost a given. In terms of the GO train announcements, I think I've heard about 5 different, quote, announcements, final announcement on the GO train, stretching back to when one of our councillors was the MPP, and the Premier came down at that, she was a Liberal at the time, announced the GO train. It's been announced about 3 times since then. So all I'm saying, never has a project been so announced so many times as the coming of the GO train. So, and I'm not sure if the event Mr. Dingwall is referring to was an invitation-only event, but again, we've heard this so many times that we need to sort of hold their feet to the fire on this one, and that's what I intend to do, because the residents of Clarington deserve what other residents are receiving, okay,
Thank
which
you,
is
Joe.
GO train.
Thank you, Joe. Folks, our candidates are moving through these questions fairly quickly, so we're through 10 questions in about 50 minutes. I've got just a couple left, so if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, please see Travis in the back corner and put it in writing. We're going to have opportunity likely to work through some of the questions from the floor. Looking forward to your participation. Adrian, we're going to start this next question with you. What is your highest priority for change or improvement in Clarington over this next term?
So I'm coming back to economic development jobs, and it's something that, despite what you're hearing, and I'll be happy to talk about what's going on, the job creation, good job creation, but we need people to be able to stay at home. We need a greater tax base from business than we have from residents. So a number one priority, again, is moving the municipality ahead with the strategic advantages that we have now, and building. This isn't something that you snap your fingers. You've got to build on things. So build on the foundations that we have laid over the last few years.
Thank you. Joe.
Well, as I said, Clarington has become almost moribund in wanting to study every issue, hiring consultants, studying it again. Oh, we got to update that plan. We don't seem to be able to get things actually done. So, for example, you know, like I said, I've heard from so many residents at the doors saying, you know, there's a lot more people. There's like 30,000 more people in the last 10 years. Nothing's changed within that last 10 years. We still have the same roads, still the same traffic bottlenecks. You know, we can't even get the 401, you know, try to get off the 401 at Bowmanville Avenue at around 4:30. It's dangerous. I tried to get the region out to address that issue. When I'm the mayor, I'll make sure that gets addressed, because this is what residents are concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I guess I'll start by thanking Mr. Neal for explaining everything that hasn't been done in the last term, because both of these gentlemen have been in a position to fix it. Both of them have been in a position and on council for 12 years. My priority is to actually get the things done that they're talking about. My priority is to put people first. My priority is to care about the homeless people sleeping under our benches and in our parks. And my priority is to make sure that we work with our province to fix our code zeros so we have ambulances when we need them, so that when we go to the hospital, we actually have a functioning hospital, that we put a shovel in the ground and actually get the hospice built. All of these things they have been in a position to do and have not done it. They can point the finger at each other, and I appreciate them doing it, but at the end of the day, they have both been in a position to fix it, and they haven't done it.
So Adrian was about to even the score with his second rebuttal, but I see that Joe will follow. Adrian, rebuttal, 30 seconds.
So we're gonna even the even. So this is, in terms of finger pointing, we heard about Bowmanville Avenue. Folks, you may recall that there was an outlet mall. Part of the outlet mall was rebuilding the exit ramp from Bowmanville Avenue. Councillor Neal repeatedly fought against that happening. We would have had 700 jobs and a new exit ramp built. And that was just an ongoing battle, unfortunately.
Thank you. And just before Joe adds his rebuttal, folks, I know we may want to cheer or jeer, but we're not going to do that this evening. Joe.
Well, what I don't believe in is spending taxpayers' money to support, again, selectively to support a big-time property developer like Smart REIT. They're a publicly traded company. Why should the region of Durham taxpayers be on the hook to basically pay for something that they needed? So, but that doesn't mean we can't fix Bowmanville Avenue. All it's going to take is a set of lights, just like Harmony Road in Oshawa, the Harmony Road exit in Oshawa. But the region can't.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, we're gonna move on. 1 30-second rebuttal per question. I understand that, and hopefully you're gonna want to use that for the next question. What three? This question, Joe, you'll start with. What three specific Clarington Durham projects or priorities should we expect you to be championing to the province and the federal government over this next term of council? 3 priorities for Clarington that you hope to get provincial and federal participation with over this next term. Joe.
Okay, so the first one is the GO train has to get completed. Number 2, we need the Bowmanville Harbor to be fixed up. Pickering did that. They got the province, the federal government, and the Conservation Authority to all contribute to a retrofit, basically, of the harbor entrance. So if you go down to Bowmanville, our harbor entrance, it could be like a jewel for Clarington. It's a sad situation down there. It's all silted up. That needs to be rebuilt. And then my last thing is I want to see our budget process improved so that we can move our infrastructure projects up like into the fall, where we budget in the fall, and then we can go after the province and the federal government for some of the dollars we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I cut you off at the 10-second mark. 3 if you want them. Tom.
Well, working with the province, we're going to fix this hospital situation and get an answer one way or the other. We are going to focus on the hospice, and we are also going to focus on our waterfront and finally determine a plan for that. It's been since 1992, and we're finally getting some community consultation on that and what we would like to see for our community, how we can all make use of that space, enjoy it together. But these are 3 priorities that I will definitely be focusing on during my time.
Thank you. Adrian.
Thank you. I'm going to be really fast on this. So firstly, GO train, yes, and you would all perhaps be led to believe that there is nothing going on the GO train. That is absolutely incorrect. It is, at this point in time, a matter of when, not if, we are trying to pin the province down on dates, but contracts have been signed. Turns of the hospital. A date was given for the hospital, 2025, shovels in the ground. The province is committed to that. You can speak to the hospital board about what work has been done, and you can talk to the hospice board about the level of engagement at the municipality of Mayoral, with that. We see the rebuttal coming with that, and I'm going to get the 10 seconds. Here's a challenge with the, with that 1 minute rule that is going on here. And I'm going to come back down to the support that we need federally and provincially to develop our economic base right here. I know I sound like a broken record. Jobs, jobs,
Thank you, Adrian. So Tom, now in a tie with Joe on rebuttals, your third rebuttal.
Well, I certainly don't want to take away from the good work that the hospital board and the hospice boards have done. They've done a fantastic job, and the municipality has contributed, but they haven't contributed enough. It shouldn't take 9.5 years to get a shovel in the ground, and we have a Development Charges Act that allows for development charges to be put towards capital projects like that, and we need to make it a priority. My time's up.
Adrian, your third rebuttal.
Thank you. So you've got 3 candidates in front of you. And politics are interesting things. I would urge each and every one of you to have a conversation with folks that are either on the hospital board, volunteer, or the hospice. I think in my opening remarks, I told you to check out my references. Please get it straight from the horse's mouth. Thank you.
Thank you. We are on to audience questions, our 13th question of the evening, and we'll start with Tom on this. What is your position on the expansion of the urban boundary as part of Envision Durham? Tom?
So the expansion of our urban development, this, I believe we're probably referring back to Amendment 107, which is special study area, where a lot of land was changed into the greenbelt without any community consultation. And in fact, people were misled for a long time because this was referred to as Camp 30. And in reality, what happened is there was an amendment made, it was slid in, and it impacted hundreds upon hundreds of property owners, and it attempted to basically give away a lot of our development lands. Personally, I think it was extremely misleading. I don't agree with it, and I'll probably use my rebuttal chip to continue.
Thank you. Adrian?
I'm sorry, for clarification, you were asking about the urban boundary expansion?
What is your position on the expansion of urban boundary as part of Envision Durham?
Okay, thank you. So firstly, that was controversial. As we accommodate the population growth that is coming, and it is coming, no ifs, ands, or buts, we have 2 choices. We can go high, a huge amount of intensification, and that is not healthy or helpful to our community. Or we can go wide, which is urban sprawl, and urban sprawl is not healthy or helpful for our community. The other option is to find something in the middle, which is exactly what Durham Region politicians did, which is expand to some degree, and we need to determine how much we're expanding the urban boundary to accommodate some growth, and we are going to have to see intensification as well. Putting our heads in the sand is not going to fix the problem. It's not one or the other. We've got to manage it.
Thank you. Joe?
So the analysis that Adrian Foster agreed with and voted for was based on no apartments being occupied that were built in the next 30 years. Totally ridiculous. But this was the, quote, analysis that was supporting the 9,400 acre expansion of the urban boundary. And as was pointed out by regional staff, it's actually in a lower intensification rate than we currently have. So we've approved secondary plans in Curtis based on the current intensification requirements. So what Mayor Foster and some of his cohorts from Pickering and Whitby, who think it's a good idea to put residential land beside huge warehouses like Sobeys, that was, again, totally flawed. Mayor Foster agreed with that one. So what we need is some common sense in this Envision Durham, and it made no sense to support the analysis that was put forward by the build representative.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Tom. Tom is using his final rebuttal.
I'm using my rebuttal because I was confused at which time Mayor Foster voted contrary to what he said in the past. In this particular one, he actually voted to allow expansion when in the past and in previous elections he actually stated that would never happen. I don't agree that we need to eat up our farmland. I believe we have an opportunity to build in certain areas and be a part of the process from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is addressed to, your last rebuttal.
You gotta take it.
I apologize.
So very quickly, we could talk about this for a long time. I would encourage for the folks who want to look at the voting record in Clarington. So my colleague has voted consistently against higher density development. It's a bit disingenuous to suggest that there will be no urban boundary expansions. And have I ever said that there should never be an urban boundary expansion? No, I have not. And I'm done.
Thank you. Joe, your final rebuttal.
One of my issues with our mayor is he sort of uses facts sometimes sort of when they're convenient. So, in fact, I did just support a higher density development just behind the Walmart. All right, so so sometimes when it fits, I support it. When it doesn't fit, I vote no, and I've always done that, and I will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is actually to you, Joe, but everyone will be given an opportunity to respond to it. We'll let you go first in this case. Change your order. I understand that you are in support of privatization of core services such as snow removal. Why would you support such if residents are already given a disservice with yard waste collection, which is privatized?
Okay, so actually our snow removal currently, part of it is contracted out. So sidewalk clearing is contracted out. The main trucks are not. They're Clarington, operators. So what I've suggested in the past is there's some courts, for example, in Bowmanville that don't see a snowplow for 3 days. So we just had an 18-inch snowfall, and then you get calls from residents saying, why does it take 3 days to get my court cleared out? So there's all kinds of challenges around that. What I did push for was an analysis for what it would look like if we contracted out some of the routes. The analysis came back and said, it doesn't make financial sense. So all I'm looking for is a better level of service, but at the same time, I want to look at bringing the clearing of the sidewalks in-house because the cost is getting out of hand. So, thank you.
Thank you. Here's a fun question. What question wasn't asked tonight that you hoped would be asked? And so you'll ask the question of yourself, and you'll be given an opportunity to answer it. Adrian.
So the question that wasn't asked tonight is, what is our vision of Clarington? What are we working towards? How are we engaging or planning on engaging the public? When you close your eyes, what do you see? And what can we all, and when I say what can we all get behind, it's, what are we preserving in our municipality? What are we changing in our municipality? And this is what elections should be about. Vision moving forward and then building and working towards that vision. Should be a positive thing. It should be a fun thing.
Thank you. Joe.
Well, we haven't spent much time talking about fiscal issues. So, for example, what will taxes go up in the next 3 or 4 years? So I think I can confidently say that I've been a consistent sort of fiscal hawk on council, and when the tax increases were not warranted, I voted no. And as Mr. Dingwall would point out, I lost that vote. But that's one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is I'll give you an example. In 2021, I voted against a 2% tax increase, I think, or maybe it was 2.3, but I thought it wasn't justified. I was right because in 2021, we actually ran a $15 million surplus. So I guess I'd have to ask the residents, did it make sense to hit you with a 2.3% tax increase and then have us run a surplus like of $15 million? So as mayor, I'm going to change our budgeting process so we don't do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, what question do you wish we had asked?
I would ask, and it's not really related to housing so much, but I would ask, when are we going to start putting people first? You know, when are we going to start focusing on the needs of our seniors? When are we going to look at transit? You know, I keep hearing about the fact that our seniors down at Wilmot Creek can't get transit, and they feel like they're a burden on their neighbors, and that shouldn't be happening. You know, the province just gave $3 million to Ajax for a cricket field, and we can't get a bus for our seniors. Both of these gentlemen have been on regional council. They've had a voice. You know, why can't we fix these things? They've had a voice about our paramedics running at code zeros. Why can't we fix these things? I was debating this 4 years ago. This isn't because of COVID. This is because of inaction, and we need to fix it. So that's what I wanted to hear is, when are we going to put people first?
Thank you. Joe, this next question will start with you. What role do you plan to take in an effort to bring increased environmental awareness to new developments in Clarington? Do you think zero-net energy communities are feasible, and what would you do to encourage environmental innovation in new development? Joe.
Well, one of the things I'd like to see is getting away from asphalt shingles, because every new house you see being built right now it's a certainty that in 15 years, or 20 if you're lucky, all the shingles are coming off that roof and they're going into landfill. So that's the only place they end up. So we had an initiative several years ago called Project Green. I tried to sort of talk to that issue, didn't really get anywhere, but I think we need to have a serious discussion with the building industry. How are they going to respond to things like that and stop, with putting shingles on, which are going to end up in the dump? The next thing is in terms of efficiency. Yeah, I support energy efficiency. The thing I don't support is forcing people, for example, into electric heat. So that's all. Thank you.
Tom.
Well, I'd like to see that we actually start building more charging stations for cars. I want to see that we start to look for ways to make our services more environmentally friendly. But I do want to touch on something really quick. The region has undergone a project where they're actually burying plastic and broken glass under our roads. And just recently on Newtonville Road, they buried a bunch of things that weren't plastic and weren't broken glass. They were batteries. There were syringes and things like that. I think I'd like every one of you to go back and watch that council meeting and see the response to that. Because Mr. Neal actually suggested that that person who brought it forward should take his evidence to the region in 2 weeks. That isn't the approach we need. When we have a situation like that that's environmental, we need to act on it quickly, and you really should watch that meeting. Thank you.
Adrian. We'll let Adrian answer first. And Since you were targeted, we will allow you a rebuttal.
And you might get a response to the response. Quite simply, one of the challenges we have is, and this is working with both the federal government and the provincial government, is looking at the building code. As you folks, the sponsors of this event this evening, will understand too well, we need a level playing field for the builders. Where one builder is trying to do the right thing and their product is far more costly, that level playing field, not just on shingles, but on energy efficiency, on alternate sources of energy. And all of these things, we all know this, all of these things are coming out. We're watching the cost of moving towards net zero and the reality of getting to net zero right there. But there have to be a mixture of carrots and sticks, rules and incentives to get us there.
Thank you. Just because we're all getting along so well, I'll give you, you'll each be able to pull one of your chits back for a rebuttal. Number 5, for Joe.
I'm pleased to see Mr. Dingwall's all of a sudden taken a big interest in what's going on in council, because in the 12 years that I've been a councillor, I've never, seen him at a single council meeting, heard from him on a single issue, and there was an issue such as Zone Clarington that involved many, many rural residents. I never heard from Mr. Dingwall at all. So I'm really pleased to see that he's suddenly taken interest in Clarington Council. Thank you.
And Tom, you're looking to anxiously use that new rebuttal. 30 seconds.
Not only did Mr. Neal not say that we should immediately shut down the road and call in the ministry, he actually suggested we allow the region to continue doing what they're doing and pave over it. And if it turns out that it is batteries leaching into our water, that the region will have to come and dig it up in 2 weeks. That's the response that he gave a citizen, was you take it to the region, not me, I'm the regional councillor. That was the response.
Mr. Dingwall didn't understand
Yeah,
what I was even talking about.
Sorry, you've used your rebuttal. You've used your rebuttal, Joe. And we're using our rebuttal, our newfound rebuttal, anxiously. Adrian.
Well, thank you. So what is missing out of this conversation is what the region did. So the information came to light Monday morning. It was not shared, by the way, with myself. I don't think Councillor Neal knew anything about it. By happenstance, I got the information Monday morning. By Monday evening, Durham Region had ceased all work and had hired a third-party consultant to look into it to see what the environmental ramifications. So it wasn't delayed for 2 weeks.
Thank you. Starting with Tom on this one. What is your plan to develop the downtown area and make it more attractive for tourism and more accessible for seniors and folks with disabilities? Tom.
Well, I will say that this is something that touches or hits close to home. My mother was paralyzed after surgery, went bad when she was 55 and found herself in a wheelchair. And I understand exactly how difficult it is for people in wheelchairs to get around, and every obstacle seems unsurmountable. I will work diligently to find ways to make that less of an obstacle. I will listen to the businesses in the downtown core, something that hasn't, quite frankly, if you talk to them, we haven't been business friendly. We need to make sure that we are working in partnership with our businesses. We're listening. That's something that you do when you're in policing. You listen. You gather information. You make evidence-based decisions. That's what I'll do. I'll work with our businesses. I'll listen to what they have to say, and we will implement their suggestions.
Thank you. Adrian.
Well, 2 things. So the Board of Trade, I don't think a week goes by that I'm not speaking with the Board of Trade in one capacity or the other, and they are the voice of business. That is their tagline, so I'm deeply engaged and involved with them. Councillor Hooper is going to love this answer because we've spoken about it. Downtown Bowmanville is getting tired. It needs a refresh. We are starting with the town square. That's going to be renamed Veterans Square and be redone. But downtown Bowmanville, it's time that we start planning, refreshing that, and of course everything that we do has to have that lens of accessibility, something that was ignored many years ago, but not now.
Joe.
So I've always maintained that in order to keep business in the downtowns, we need to keep the costs reasonable. So that's the first part. The second part is when we give out grants, I'd like to see grants which are tied to accessibility. So I brought this up several years ago at council, but it didn't go anywhere. But I think there needs to be a program whereby, we do give grants to businesses for things like facades, but it should also include, if you put a ramp in or something like that, that maybe there's some financial incentives for doing that. I've done that on my own building where we made it accessible with a ramp, but I'd like to see where that is part of it, some incentive programs that we have for downtown businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Adrian, and Tom, you touched on this earlier, so you'll like this question as well. But Adrian, it is clear that we are entering a new era of electric vehicles. What will you do as mayor to facilitate that in Clarington?
So we are already significantly increasing the infrastructure for charging electric vehicles. We are getting grant money from wherever we can get grant money to subsidize the cost on that. The other thing that I've been directly involved with, and I will continue to be involved with, are the relationships between Lexicon, which is the utility that we own. So Lexicon, the one side of the business division, is focused on charging stations, no shock to anyone, charging stations for vehicles. So it's moving forward with that engagement and that partnership, because it is at this point a partnership.
Thank you. Tom? Oh, sorry, Joe.
Yeah, we will continue to roll out charging stations. We have a number of them at Rickard, and I think they'll be increased across the community where we can do so. And we have a number of municipal vehicles. Our fleet is basically of cars is basically all electric, or will be all electric. And I see where we'll offer that across the municipality in order to facilitate charging vehicles.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, as I said, I already touched on that we'd expand it, but I would go further to say that I'd be expanding it into areas like Orono that have been asking for one and don't have one. We need to make sure that we are thinking about our smaller communities as well. I will say, and Mayor Foster brought up a lexicon, it's my understanding that the mayor is paid $45,000 a year from Viridian and $25,000 a year from a lexicon. I don't believe that the mayor should be paid from a utility that he's being paid by us to sit on, because it doesn't make sense to be paid twice for doing the same job. So as mayor, if I was on that board, I certainly wouldn't be keeping that money, and I would be donating it directly back to the community. I don't think it's appropriate to receive it.
Thank you. We'll start with Joe on this final question, and we'll ask for a quick and it was a pretty good jab. I think I'm going to have to allow a rebuttal on that. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. So there is a board of directors for Lexicon. It is a skill-based board of directors. Mr. Dingwall was speaking to a period of time when I was chair of Viridian that, yes, in fact, it was probably around $45,000 that I was being paid to do that. I can tell you that it is not a regular job, a huge amount of time. I would suggest that I've donated in cash back to the municipality about $50,000.
Adrian, that's your time on that one, I'm afraid. We're going to get a really quick answer on this final question and then move into to closing. We'll start with Joe. What will you do to implement farmland protection? We cannot eat rocks. I thought that was a good final question. Joe.
Well, I know it's a concern from the farming community when you see land being converted from agricultural to residential. It drives the cost up. And I know there's a number of farmers, for example, that are really in the farming business that want to acquire more farmland, and it's, there's a lot of consolidation going on in the farming industry. So I think that goes back to that whole issue around Envision Durham. So if you take 9,400 acres of farmland out of circulation, that's going to make that farming more difficult for the farmers that want to acquire more farmland. So I think that all revolves around trying to get that election. You know, unfortunately, Envision Durham came up in an election year, and I think there was a lot of other considerations there when the votes were being taken, but that needs to get revisited. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom? What will you do to implement farmland protection? We cannot eat rocks.
No, we cannot. Farmland is graded, and we have different grading of farmland. Our best quality farmland should always be protected and should never be developed. We have to make sure that we are preserving those lands for future generations, because we have food insecurity. We have a lot of problems coming down the road, and quite frankly, people come here. We have a lot of tourism coming here to eat farm fresh food, right? We've got a huge market right next to us. We need to make sure that we are protecting the top quality farmland, and that we find ways to ensure that development is not pushed in those areas.
Thank you. Adrian?
Thank you. So my answer is I don't know. And you know, here's the challenge. You've got a lot of farmers in Clarington today where the lands are now worth tens of millions of dollars. And Councillor Neal and I have been on opposite sides of this, not in the way it might be typified tonight, where we're hearing from some of the farmers, and I get it, you know, a huge amount of wealth that they should be allowed to develop. We had a former councillor show up at council suggesting that farmers should be able to develop land in any way that they want to. We do need to look at the various qualities of land. You know, what should be, what shouldn't be, how are the lands preserved or not. But there is no easy answer, and I can tell you, if you go to the Ag Advisory Committee, we have been struggling with that, and the farming community has been struggling with that.
Thank you. I'm now going to invite our candidates to present their 2-minute closing remarks in the reverse order on which we started. So, Joe, this time you are first. 2 minutes, Joe.
So, thank you, Roger, and nice job tonight. So, now, if you do think that it's time for a change for mayor, I would ask you to look carefully at the options you have. And the mayor is the main representative of our community. It has to be someone, in my view, with the breadth of experience and knowledge. What I can offer is a broad background, not only having served on council, and someone keeps pointing out that I've been there for 12 years, and quite frankly, in that 12 years, you have some successes and you have some losses. So I think my successes have actually been pretty good. But the reason I'm running for mayor is I think in order to really change the way that we operate, that we do need a change. So I've been a president of a local company that had hundreds of employees. I did that for 4 years. I've ran my own law practice for 38 years. And as I said, I was a counselor for 12 years. And another thing I did was I was the chair of the Research Ethics Board at Lake Ridge Health for about 8 years. And these are, that last position, not a particularly glamorous one, but it was a lot of time and effort. But that's the sort of thing I've done for the community. Now, the mayor is not an entry-level position. So I'd ask the residents to think carefully about their vote. You know, at the region, we have the issue of the expansion of the incinerator. That's lurking out there. We have the anaerobic digester that the region wants to put in Clarington. So we need a spokesperson that has the background, the knowledge, and the experience of how to wrestle with those issues, because they're going to have to get addressed. So I believe that I'm best able to lead Clarington for the next 4 years into the future. So I would ask you to vote for Joe Neal for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I know I might surprise a few of you, but I'm going to be pretty direct. Policing and politics is not that different. I led large investigative teams. The mayor leads a team. He leads council. I make evidence-based decisions. The mayor is required to follow the rules, process, and the law. My ability to follow rules, process, and the law has been challenged by some of the best legal minds in the country. It is not that different. You have to find consensus. You have to work with people. Now you have to look at experience. Mr. Neal has brought up experience. But what he hasn't told you is the entire time he's been in council, he's also maintained his law practice. Apparently you can have 2 full-time jobs, but you can definitely collect 2 full-time salaries. Now, during COVID lockdown, 5 of 6 councillors collected over $8,000 in travel expenses while attending virtual meetings. I'd love to know how you formulate mileage going from your living room to your kitchen. But apparently that happens. So there is good experience and there's bad experience. And there's a proven, you've heard time and time again, how many things have not been done. And they point the finger at each other. I can't get it done because of him. He can't get it done because of me. The reality is, if it was right for the people of Clarington, you both should have got it done. And you didn't. So I know about the incinerator. I know about these issues. I have been active in the community. I've actually talked to homeless people. I've actually talked to nurses. I've talked to paramedics who work through their lunches and have been completely forgotten about. I've talked to our regional workers who need to be respected as well. I'm running out of time, but thanks very much for listening, and I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight.
Thank you. Just before we go to you, Adrian, for the 2 minutes, I just want to make sure that Wendy Giroux from Durham has come up on the stage. She's right behind me. Wow, perfect timing. Adrian, final closing.
Well, thank you. So I agree 100% that you need knowledge, you need experience. You also need relationships. And I have built those relationships. I'm going to go back to look at my resume. It is on the web right now, adrianfoster.ca. I'm not sure that Councillor Neal and I have pointed each other, and Mr. Dingwall, I'll suggest that there are out of the councillors, 5 out of 7 councillors whose travel expenses were slashed. In terms of getting nothing done, Camp 30, now in our possession, part of that. Zoolands, now in our possession, 34 acres. A number of trails. Service lands. We have bought service lands in. Just recently we turned the water on for additional employment. Broadband. We've got high-speed access to roughly 98% of the municipality where that did not exist. We've gone through a significant reorganization during the pandemic. There are 2 departments that no longer exist working towards streamlining. Minor thing, called hiring a new CAO with a different vision and a different direction on that. There have been a significant number of accomplishments over the past 4 years, despite the fact that we were dealing with a pandemic. And I'm shocked that we don't want to celebrate the successes of our community, because none of these could happen not only without staff and without council, but with a huge number of people that are volunteering to do things. Again, the hospital board is right here. That was a huge achievement to get the province to pin down a date on that. It's huge. So many wonderful things have happened.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank each of the candidates for providing a good discussion, for informing us, for being spirited at times and yet polite. I want to thank the Durham Region Association of Realtors, the Durham Region Home Builders Association for hosting tonight's event. And it is now my pleasure to welcome Wendy Giroux, the CEO of the Durham Region Association of Realtors, to close out this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple things not on my agenda, but big hand for Roger. Great job. Thanks, Roger. And We've been asked to talk about Election Fest 2022. It's sponsored by the Clarington Promoter newspaper, and it's at St. Paul's Church Hall on October the 12th from 6 to 9. And talk to Hugh. He's just over there if you'd like a seat at that. So, thank you for the community for joining us and meeting the candidates and making their voices heard. As a lot has happened in the last 4 years since we have gathered like this municipally, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected literally every aspect of our daily lives in our communities, from healthcare, education, and affordable housing. Our priorities had to readjust since 2018, and Durham Region continues to experience a rapid population growth, with the region experiencing an 8% increase from 2016 to 2021 alone. And it continues to trend upward. With this strong population growth, it is imperative that all levels of government are committed to working together to making housing a priority. There are issues beyond borrowing costs that are directly affecting housing leading up to the municipal election. This is special focus for our candidates: infrastructure, reducing red tape, addressing housing supply issues. We want to make sure every community in the Durham region is a first choice for home buyers and builders, for residential, commercial, and industrial alike. The opportunity to be with you today and hear directly from the candidates hoping to be mayor of Clarington and lead their municipal council for the next 4 years is a fundamental value that we need to recognize, that is not necessarily available in many regions around the world. And to the candidates here tonight, thank you. We know it takes passion and dedication to lead your community, and it takes an incredible amount of courage to step forward and put your name on that ballot. We appreciate the sacrifices made by you and your families during the few weeks of this campaign. Thank you again to Rogers TV Durham for hosting, and we'll let you know when this is going to be recorded. And to everyone here, safe travels tonight. Thank you.